Greetings, y'all. Welcome back to the garden. It's late March here in north central Florida, and as you can see, the sun is shining, the flowers are blooming, and you might even be able to hear the bees buzzing. So I figured now would be a great time to review and go over one of the all-time great garden and permaculture plants, and that's mulberry. It's fast growing, easy to propagate, and makes tons of delicious fruit that'll grow almost anywhere nearly year round. So let's go out the front yard, take a look at what specimens we have to work with, take a cutting, and then we'll go in the back and try a couple different propagation methods, and then follow their progress over the next few weeks and see which ones work out best. So join me as we go to the front yard, we'll get a cutting, and then head to the back. All right, y'all, here's a shot of a dwarf ever-bearing mulberry that I planted last year. It was only about 6 or 8 inches when I put it in the ground, and you can see where I've actually done a little bit of training to get off one of the original sucker stems to leave one main stem. But in just one season, it's gone from about this height to well over 6 feet tall. It's quite impressive. I can't even reach the top of it, and I'm 6 feet tall. And we can see that it's just absolutely loaded with fruit already starting to form on it. So here in the second year of its life, it's already starting to give off tons and tons of fruit. And that's the power of mulberry. Unlike most other fruit trees or even berries, it starts to fruit very quickly, and even in the form of a cutting, you'll see it'll start to make flowers as well. So hopefully in another couple weeks these fruit will be ripe, and we'll have to be able to do a little update on them and give them a little bit of a taste test. But as you can see, within 1 year from a cutting, you can go from 6 inches to 6 feet and already have tons of fruit starting to come in the middle March down here in North Florida. Now, when it comes time to actually take a cutting off the plant, you want to kind of examine the structure of what you already have in place and try to remove a piece that maybe should be taken out anyway, right? If there's a piece that's doing well, we want to leave it where it is. But if there's a piece that's maybe not doing well or interfering with some of the other branches, then we can take that out. And one that comes to mind is this little one right here. You can see how it's actually kind of growing in this sort of S-shaped pattern. It's actually facing downward towards the ground while all the other ones are facing up, reaching towards the sky. And if we get a little bit closer here, we can see it's actually kind of rubbing against one of the neighboring branches, as well as kind of crowding the center of the plant. So for all of those reasons, this would be a great candidate to take to use to make cuttings from. And it's not too big, it's not too small, it's got a little bit of a woody stem to it, which we like, and it's a nice length, so we can get, several examples out of this. So because of where it is and because it's being a little bit of a bother to its neighbors, we'll take this downturned stem out. That will free up the center, leave these other limbs nice and vertical, and it prevents chafing here between these two particular limbs on the plant. So we'll just go in with a nice pair of snippers here. I'll try to do this one hand. And we'll just snip it nice and close to the main trunk so it can heal over easily. And now we can take our cutting, which is about maybe 2 feet long or so, take it into the back, subdivide it, and we'll try our 3 different methods of propagation, and we'll see which ones turn out best. But this is a great, happy, healthy little specimen and should work very nicely for us. Alrighty, y'all, here we are with our little cut specimen from the tree in the front yard, and now we're going to set up our little propagation station, which is very simple. It's just a couple of basically plastic cups or pots with a little bit of very simple plain potting soil with no extra fertilizers added to it. And we're going to try 3 different methods, one using a commercial rooting hormone, one using just aloe vera, and then one just using plain old raw plant into dirt. And so we'll be able to kind of compare and contrast, see which method works best. All right, y'all. Here's a little propagation station. As you can see, it's a very simple little setup. We have 3 different cups, each labeled, one labeled gel, the other labeled aloe, and the other just plain. We have our rooting hormone gel. We have just a little piece of homegrown aloe, and then of course nothing at all for the third one. And the soil I have in here is nothing special at all. It's just plain old regular potting soil that just doesn't have any fertilizers added to it. So the more plain and simple, the better. And I wanted to show you sort of 3 different stages of cuttings that I've got here. Here's some that I took about 2 weeks ago, and as you can see, they're already starting to put on leaves and new little budlets are forming. Here's some cuttings I took about 2 months ago, and they're almost, in full bloom. bloom here. They've even got some small tiny fruits starting to form on these cuttings. And here are some very large cuttings that I did probably about 3 months ago. And this is just to show you that not all cuttings have to be small. This one is as big around as my index finger and is probably over 2 feet in length, and yet it took perfectly well, just as well as some of the smaller ones, right? And you can see they're all leafed out now, starting to put on fruit, even though they're essentially just glorified cuttings. But it goes to show that not all cuttings have to be small. You can use little 4 to 6 inch segments, or you can use some that are about a foot or so long, or you can even go up to, 2, 3 feet long. So long as they have a few inches buried under the soil and it stays moist in a relatively shady location, mulberry is essentially foolproof, and you can take cuttings of any size and they'll all propagate equally well. So now we'll take our cutting from the front yard here, start subdividing it, and we'll put it into our cups. All right, let's start cutting this guy up here. Like we said, we're going to try to get 6 cuttings if we can. So we're first going to start by cutting this guy into thirds. So approximately somewhere about here and somewhere about here. All right. We now have 3 pieces. We could use each of these if we like, but just for the sake of our experiment, just so we don't have a single example of each, we'll have a couple examples of each. We can now go through and cut each of these in half, just like we did before. Snip, snip, and snip. I hope you can see that. So now we've got 6 small cuttings. All right, keeping our same orientation, up is up, down is down. These are sort of in their twig form, and now we want to make the other cuttings the same way. We're just going to go through, and with our free hand here, if I got an extra hand, we're just going to strip off the leaves and the little immature fruit that it's trying to put on. We want it to now put all of its energy into making roots over the next couple weeks. It will leaf out again in no time. In fact, before it's even done completely rooting, it will already start putting new leaves out. That's what's kind of amazing about mulberry, is it just wants to grow, grow, grow. But for the first couple weeks, if it can focus on putting its energy down into the roots rather than trying to maintain these leaves and these immature fruit as well, so much the better. So it'll look a little stark when we end up with 6 little glorified twigs here, but in the long run that's actually best for the plant, and we'll now let it focus all of its energy into making roots rather than leaves. Once it has roots, the rest is easy. So now we have a pair for our rooting hormone gel, a pair for our aloe vera, and then a pair for plain. So now let's go take a look at our soil and see how we prep the cuttings themselves. Then we're going to try 3 different methods here. We've got some rooting hormone gel, our aloe vera en natural, and then just plain old wet dirt, right? And I'm not sponsored. This is no particular brand. This is just kind of a generic rooting hormone gel, cloning gel. Cutting is a clone is a cutting. That's just different terminology for the exact same thing. The idea is it's just an exact genetic copy of the plant you took it from. And it will often have some kind of a little fancy color to it. The only thing you need to be cautious about here is when you're using any sort of a chemical like this hormone, is you want to pour a little bit out into a separate container and then dip your cuttings into that. That way, on the off chance there is some contamination in the cuttings themselves, you don't get that into your main batch of supplies. It would only contaminate this small amount, and that's more than enough for what we need. So now we have our rooting hormone gel, our small piece of aloe, just a couple inches long with a slit through it, and then just some plain old dirt. The next step is to take a stick, a pen, whichever you have, and just poke a little hole, or I guess in this case 2 holes, into each cup. That way when we stick our cutting in there, we don't scrape off the hormone and we don't risk damaging the cutting itself and perhaps bending the stem. So now we just take one of our cuttings, we dip it in our rooting hormone, just the bottom tip or so. As you can see, we've got maybe, a quarter to a half an inch covering there. It sort of has the consistency of honey. And now we'll simply stick this down into our pre-made hole, making sure that we don't scrape off all of that rooting hormone we just put on there. And as you can see, a tiny, tiny bit goes a long, long way. I could do hundreds of cuttings just with this few drops in this bowl here. And again, back into our pre-punched hole so that we don't bend our stem or scrape off any of our rooting hormone. And now we can just push that moist soil down around those stems and they'll be just fine. And now we'll do the same trick with our aloe vera plant. As you can see here, I just have a little slit cut inside it. We'll simply put our cutting into the aloe, roll it around a bit, get it covered. As you can see, hopefully that'll show up on camera there. Oh, come into focus. Oh, well, you gotta trust me, it's there. Unfortunately, it's clear, so it doesn't show up as well. Same thing, we'll put that into our pre-made hole so we don't scrape off the aloe we just put on there. We'll take our second cutting, try to get some light. Again, rub that into the aloe, really get it nice and coated. Again, it's kind of hard to see on camera, but it looks kind of like it's covered in clear honey there. And again, we'll put that into our pre-made hole, taking care not to scrape it off. We'll just kind of compact the soil around it there a little bit. All right. And now our last two are just plain. We literally do nothing to them. We're just going to stick them straight down in there as they are. Right down in there. And the holes still help in that case, because we don't want to risk bending the stem and perhaps breaking it right as we poke it down into the soil. Move this stuff out of the way here. So now we have our three different methods. We have our sort of commercially available rooting hormone gel, our plain old all natural aloe just from a house plant, and then absolutely nothing at all. We'll now give these a light little watering in here. And now we'll simply set these guys aside outside in a shady place, and we'll check on them in 2 weeks. And by then we should have some new leaves coming on, and we'll probably even see some roots coming out of the bottom of the cups. But that's really all there is to it. Just some pre-moistened plain soil that you've punched holes into to make insertion easier. You can either use rooting hormone gel, which I prefer over powder, aloe vera gel, or just plain old water. All three will work, and so this will be a fun little experiment to see what works best. And we can also use 3 different size cuttings, from the sort of typical 4 to 6 inches you see to maybe a foot long to several feet long. And because mulberry is so prolific, all of them will work equally well. And this is why we love mulberry. It's so easy, even I can do it. Alrighty, y'all. Thank you for joining me again in the garden for this little episode where we went into a little bit of mulberry bush propagation. As you can see, it's very fun, very quick, very easy. Just a few little tips to keep in mind. One, if you're going to take a cutting off of a plant, try to take one that maybe is in a bad spot to begin with that the plant would benefit from losing. You can then take it, cut it into any size you like, and then try any of the methods we used today, which were chemical hormones, all natural products like aloe, or you can just take the cutting itself and put it into moist soil. Then you just want to strip the leaves off and leave it in sort of a shady spot for the next few weeks, and you'll be amazed at how quickly they'll go from a bare stem to a nice lush little cutting like this. And oftentimes the cuttings themselves will even try to start putting out fruit. That's how prolific and easy mulberry is. So don't be afraid to try it. You can either take cuttings from a living plant, or you can order them in the mail. All of them will work equally well. Mulberry is just that easy to use. So don't be afraid. Give it a shot, and you'll have waves and waves of yummy, yummy mulberries, oftentimes within a season, but surely within 2. So give it a shot, and thank you again for joining me. Cheers to cheese.